Alright, okay, so here we go.
Alright.
This is slightly different in that I'm finally going to be answering all my own questions.
Okay.
Right.
Initials, age, and location, please.
Okay, it's ZT. I'm 33 and currently in Tasmania on planet Earth, or the world as we know it here. Let's see how much I fidget today.
So ZT, how happy are you right now?
Yeah, pretty happy, I reckon. On a scale, I don't know, like maybe 9.2 maybe out of 10.
Yep.
Things are pretty good. Things are going pretty well. A couple of little niggles that I'd like to work out, but I'm hoping that that'll happen in time. But as it is, yeah, everything's going pretty smooth right now. Pretty good. In a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. What was the best thing to happen to you last year?
Last year, oh god, what was that? 2015. 2015. I guess I started to get back on my path. I think I kind of got waylaid dealing with other people's responsibility, and I finally found a few things that were more in tune with what I set out to do. So that's pretty good. Sort of getting involved in sort of projects to do with outdoor work and ecology, sustainability, things like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty positive. So it's like my other responsibilities diminished. I got back on my life, which is good. That's the life I'm living.
Yeah.
At least this time round.
Cool. What are you most looking forward to this year?
What we're doing right now, I reckon, this course. So guiding, adventure guiding, getting out into the wilderness, seeing Tassie, getting to explore Tasmania and just sort of be in it. It's what's happening, and there's going to be even more of it. So yeah, pretty stoked about that. Bit worried what it'll be like with the winter, but it was.
You'll be fine.
Winter's not harsh here, so it should be
Lots of warm
pretty easy
clothes.
going, yeah. So yeah, definitely see the wilderness, be in the wilderness. Epic.
Yeah, it is pretty epic. From what? Yeah. Please describe yourself in a positive manner using just 3 words.
Right. Okay.
How do you think about this one?
Humorous. Interested. Maybe. And I don't know. 3. Eclectic. Does that work?
Eclectic?
What does eclectic mean? That's sort of like a bit strange, a bit curious.
A bit sort of.
I reckon that'll do it.
Yeah, a bit sort of different, bit out there,
I'll go with that. That's
sort of
as
mysterious.
positive as I can be off the cuff, because I've deliberately not thought about any of these, even though I've asked other people. It's not something I dwell on much. So it's good. That'll suffice.
What is your favourite attribute?
My favourite attribute? In myself, humour definitely helps me cope with the sad reality I'm faced with sometimes. And in other people, I would say probably like honesty or integrity. I like people who, when you meet them, they're exactly who they appear to be.
Yeah.
People that give you loads of power and try and sell themselves, but it's actually bullshit. So I mean, far too many people like that. So,
That is very good attributes right there.
cool.
If you could make a wish and gain one ability, what would it be?
Definitely to fly, man. I need any excuse to wear my underpants on the outside, so if I can fly around, then yeah, epic. Yeah, there's a feeling, when you're on top of something really, really high, and I just want to jump off.
Jump off, yeah. I get that.
That's why I want to try and do some parachuting, get certified in some way to get as close to that as possible, gliding or something. Trapped in this floor. When you see a bird and it catches a thermal, and it just stays up there without doing anything.
Just sits there, doesn't
it's
it?
like twitching its bum a bit.
Perfect balance.
It's like, fuck yes. I want that to be me. Definitely.
Cool. For what in your life do you feel most grateful?
Most grateful in my life. So I guess, I don't know if it'd be right. I guess like having an awareness of being here. It's like being able to see and hear and take everything in, especially if you get out into the outdoors, the wilderness, whatever, being in a forest or somewhere and just being able to absorb it and feel like I'm a part of it. And that brings me an amazing feeling of peace, I think. So I'll say that, just an awareness of being a part of it. So that would do it.
What is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen?
Most beautiful thing. Well, I think that would be difficult. I mean, there's the natural world, it's beautiful, it's breathtaking when you see mountains and valleys and forests and things, but then on the other side of it, it's probably equally as appealing as the female form. There's nothing else quite like a woman's body with all the curves and grooves. And there's something deeply satisfying about seeing a woman. It's whether it's the neck, the face, the eyes, the hair, from everything else, boobs, vaginas, hips, whatever, man. It's like it's perfect in a lot of ways, dude. So they'd probably be on either side of the coin, the natural environment and a woman's body. Of course, having a naked woman in the natural environment is no mean thing.
You can get those coins.
Get those coins stamped. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. What brings you the most joy in life?
Most joy. I say probably the music of food. Music fills me up, makes me happy, and certainly excited. Food, I mean, obviously it's nourishing, but when you get that, you look forward to a meal, and it's an amazing meal. It's well cooked, it's filling, it's delicious. I mean, that is awesome. But on the flip side, when you get that expectation for a meal and shit, it's like soul destroying. It's tragic, like that crushing disappointment. And so when it's good, it's amazing. Different food and music.
No, I feel similar. What will you do tomorrow if money was no object?
If money was, see that question, I know I wrote the question, but it comes down to whether or not I have lots of money or if money doesn't exist. So if I had lots of money, I would create a political party and bankroll a political party that was based on impartial scientific advice, so it wasn't based on our current system, which seems to be different methods of earning money. Wealthy people earning money, or the labour force earning money. It's like I find that a bit irrelevant because money's something created. So to have something that's like a rational party where income didn't come into it, it was only you'd make the right choice based on all of the evidence. That would be secular. That would be something I'd like to do. Because the two-party system doesn't work, because to me it feels like two heads in the same failed sort of system. So you'd have another thing that could appeal to a lot of people, I think, because it would be on sound advice. All these scientific advices that the government ignores, you could actually pay attention to. That would be my fantasy with money and for
I might just ask you a few more questions, because maybe one or two more, if that's okay.
We've got time now, we're happy to come back. Whatever.
Yeah, I might just ask you one more question, just while we're here.
One more.
Do you feel you are represented politically?
No. Like I said, the two-party thing has failed. Even like in the UK, the Labour Party is almost indistinguishable to the Tories. Well, it was until Jeremy Corbyn was elected. He is sold as being extremely left-wing, and I don't think he's that extremely left-wing. I mean, he is obviously left-leaning, but as a whole, until Jeremy Corbyn, there was very little difference between the two of them, and in fact Labour initiated a lot of the really stupid policies like public finance initiatives, which have spent hospitals that cost us like 400 times what they would cost to build. And you know, in Australia, I don't see there's much difference between Liberal and Labour. But then if you have the Greens or these other fringe parties, I believe that they're so fringe that they will never appeal to the mainstream in such a way that they'll become the party of choice. Independents, I don't think independents have a lot of weight. I think that they can maybe stick to their morals more, but at the same point, say like Jackie Lambie, I think she's also a bit of a nut. But that allows, you know, okay, you can do whatever you want as an independent, but I don't think you'll ever get power. So I think the system itself is flawed because well, like take America, the Democrats and the Republicans, it's like people think that they're being given a choice. But, you know, it's two choices of the same branch, you could say. I don't think that works. So I think a new system that would be based more on power sharing. Ideally, the fantasy would be there used to be a system in Rome where it was weighted by sort of demographics or income, employment, whatever. So the population would randomly be sort of drawn by lottery. So you might end up being a politician, or I might, or someone might, and it would depend on your background as to how many people in your similar situation would be represented by members of the public. And I think that as an idea would be quite interesting because like all these people that study politics or whatever, like there's a funnel from these quite wealthy schools at the university, and it's very cliquey. It's like the old boys network of wealthy people who know other wealthy people. Then if you look at the politicians, they're all millionaires. How are they representing normal people when people are struggling to pay bills, or they're struggling, working like 40, 50 hours or even 60 hours a week for people that are trying to start to get into law or some of these, more clearly defined careers. It's like they don't represent us. And I don't know, that's my train of thought. But whatever we have isn't working. We need something else.
Thank you. We'll commence the questioning again.
Okay, and about one. Okay, right, part two. Different classroom, same people.
Yes, well, welcome back, ZT.
Continuation.
Okay. So first question up for round two. Would you vote for an independent candidate if their views were more closely aligned with yours?
I probably would. I reckon so. However, I've tactically voted in the past where you vote for the least worst. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the time that's probably still would be the case. Just try to keep the Tories or the Liberals out, or whoever is similar to them, which is most parties. If I thought there was an MP locally that was going to do a lot of good locally, I might vote for them in that respect. But I don't know, say they had views on a wider picture, I don't know if they would ever get to act on that.
Okay. Are you a member of any on or offline activism or global democracy groups like Avaz, Some of Us, Get Up, Greenpeace?
I am. I'm a member of Avaz, Get Up, Some of Us, 38 Degrees, and subscribed to Greenpeace's emails, but I'm not. Some of these NGOs I'm not completely convinced of. I mean, they do good work, but I'm not quite sure how much money some of them goes towards things. I certainly like the idea of the online democracy as a community, because there's now millions of people. So as a block, as a voice, people listen to. And I know certainly in the UK, 38 Degrees, which is more of a UK-based one, they've been mentioned by politicians as influencing them, simply because of the number of people that come forward to raise their voices about specific issues. And I think that's what we need, because as I said earlier, I don't think that the politicians represent us, so who does? And we have to represent ourselves in that situation. I think that's what these organisations try to do. Certainly I know 350.org
is pretty active in Australia, and they did a lot of work to stop the trawler. And I think that was extremely important, especially where we are in Tasmania. And I think they're still quite active in sort of like anti-fossil fuel campaigns. And I think that's extremely important, especially here in Australia, where coal is still like a primary industry, and we really need to get away from that. So yeah, definitely. Remember, I think that the way forwards, some of them obviously, because it gets political, other people have agendas, and then obviously, there's this possibility of confused messages or things, and certainly I heard that there was some issues with the Vaz and some other political groups where Vaz stole the limelight from some indigenous groups who were trying to, I think they were meant to lead a march, and they'd agreed that they were going to be at the front so they would get the most publicity for the cameras, the media, and they got told the wrong starting point, and Avaz were at the correct place, and Avaz were at the front, got all the promotional stuff, and this thing that was about like workers' solidarity and anti-capitalism, which obviously affects ethnic minorities and indigenous people because they're the people having their land stolen by the corporations. And I think that was a missed opportunity because they're the people we need to help. So then it's like, well, why did Avaz do that? And then it's like the sort of political games, which is, I don't like the idea of that because that's like what the politicians do. So I think they're good, but again, we still have to be very careful about what it is we're actually supporting, I think.
Yeah. What is your understanding of the deficit and debt?
Okay, my understanding of it is that debt is the total debt that a nation state, say Australia or the UK or whoever has with these financial institutions, and the deficit is how much we add to that every financial year. But then it gets a bit confusing as to who the debt is actually with. Because although we borrow money from, say, well, I guess in Australia it might be the Bank of Australia, or in the UK it would be the Bank of England or something like that. But these are state-run organisations in effect. Like especially in the UK, the Bank of England is in effect a branch of government. So we're kind of borrowing money off ourselves and then paying interest to ourselves. And it seems that it's a bit confusing as to why that's such a big problem when it's our debt. Especially when the government could in effect just create the money themselves. It's like we're given the power to create debt to an institution that we run and control, but we don't make the benefit from it as a nation. A select few people make a lot of money from it. So it seems very silly because the government could just create the money and then spend the money either to reduce the debt that we have, or say public building, or there's an idea helicopter money or whatever they want to call it, where they just give money to citizens. And I believe that's been discussed in the EU, but even the minuscule amounts they're talking about is like €600 per person. But even that they think would stimulate the economy to such a point because people would buy telly, or they'd save it, or they'd pay off debt, so everybody becomes more financially secure. There's all these things that we could do if the government took back the power that they already have to create the money, and instead we give it to banks, which is then becomes an excuse because they say, oh, we can't afford these services, the debt's too high, we can't afford to pay for things like looking after old people or looking after returning soldiers, and instead these people get neglected or they have their benefit cut, they become homeless. And even like, especially in the States, in the UK, there's like some horrific percentage of returning soldiers that are now homeless because they're not looked after, they don't get the support. So obviously the money's there. The whole financial system is a fiat money system where it's about the faith that it has value, and it's just created on a computer screen. So debt is manufactured on a screen by organisations like banks. Banks have the power to create the debt, but until that moment it never existed. So if they can create money that doesn't exist and then indebt an entire society to a system that we created, it seems a bit banal, because we could just create the money ourselves through the government and then invest it in infrastructure or benefits or whatever it is we needed as a nation, and we don't do that. Instead we have this hierarchy, this old system where banks make money and people invest in banks and they make money, and the people, the ones who work, whose taxes are used to pay off the interest and all the rest of it, we don't get the benefit. and yet the government meant to be the elected representatives of society. They're meant to be our public servants. So it doesn't make any sense to me. You know, we could have the power to create the money and spend it as society needs, and instead we don't. So the whole deficit thing is ridiculous.
With regards to the nation's finances, can you describe what is meant by the term economy?
Now, I'm not even sure I know, but my idea of the economy is to do with GDP, gross domestic product, which is about productivity and revenue that is raised. So both, I believe it would be the amount of money that is generated through commerce, trade, taxation, work, but then I'm not totally sure if that's, I don't know if GDP is whatever is created, or if GDP is just a tax raised from that revenue. Like maybe there's a total revenue, and then GDP is the tax off it. I don't totally know, but the idea is that the economy in capitalism has to grow, has to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And to me, that doesn't make any sense because, like say the UK, it's an island, or Australia, okay, it's a bigger island, but it's a location. So how can it keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, especially if everybody else is convinced they all have to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger? Where does that go? Especially on a planet, and we're on a finite planet, the resources are finite. We can only mine a certain amount of minerals, we can only farm a certain amount of food. There's only so much we can produce, but if everybody has to get bigger, especially in a society like ours where we waste so much, we can waste like up to 40% of the food that we create, or disposable foods, all these resources that people create and are then wasted. If we have this continually growing economy, it doesn't make any sense because there's nowhere to grow to. And if we're competing with everybody, it means not everybody can grow. Because obviously if someone gets bigger, that means maybe someone else is lost out. So this idea of the economy, that's all it is, it's an idea. This idea of economics, even GDP, all these things, it's just an idea that's part of a system that we have that I would say is part of capitalism. And I've heard of other things where there's steady state economics, where you just have to keep going basically. And I believe in a sustainable mindset, that's what we need. What's the point of growing? I don't understand the point of growing, because if you have a tumour, all it does is grow. It serves no function, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it kills its host. And I believe that's what capitalism is. It's like this cancer, it's just a spreading cancer. It serves no real function for the entity it's a part of. Okay, there's lots of people benefiting from this current system. But I believe steady state economics could be extremely useful if we're going to actually live in harmony with our environment, because there's nowhere to grow to. So if we can learn to live within our means and actually spend money wisely, the money that we're creating, if we're spending it wisely, then I don't understand why it has to get bigger. It just has to be sufficient to support everybody. And even now when we have this growing economy, we still aren't supporting everybody. We don't support these people in third world, well, we don't use third world countries anymore, do we? What do you call them? Developing world, the developing world. So we don't even support them. We don't even support our own people. We don't support the sick people or the old people. We don't support young people trying to learn anymore. So if the current system, which is growing, doesn't support anybody, then it's not working. So if we were able to actually bring ourselves back as a society to something that was sustainable and constant, it could probably be a lot smaller and actually support people, because we don't need to prop up the 0.01% society that cream off all the profit. So that's my understanding of economics or economy. I'm not totally sure what the technical term is, but that's how I see it.
What is your opinion of the relationship between industry and government?
Currently, I believe it's a very cosy relationship, especially within certain industries, almost a revolving door. I believe that politicians don't regulate many industries effectively because they then believe they'll obtain consultancy positions, or even positions within the companies as CEOs or other board member sort of roles. So they regulate lightly, and then they get rewarded by ridiculous, hundreds of thousands of dollars or $1 million pensions. And obviously the role of government is to regulate industry so the industry is effective and it provides the service that society needs. And I certainly don't think that we see that. Like even recently, like we've seen renewable energies have like subsidies and things cut heavily, and yet there's a race spending something like $600 billion a year on subsidising fossil fuels that we know are destroying the planet. And that's a government policy. They're subsidising things that are killing us, and yet cutting funding from the very things that we need to sort of take society forward in a post-carbon economy. And again, it's corrupt, and we can see it's corrupt, and yet nothing really seems to happen. It doesn't make any sense. Especially in the UK, where they've got the global financial empire, the city of London, at the head of the global offshore banking, and yet currently they're having a corruption seminar, or whatever you want to call it, where all these people from around the world are coming to discuss corruption, and yet the UK chooses not to act on any of its crown dependencies or whatever, where it legally has the right to change the laws and, I'm not sure what the word is, but they can basically freeze parliamentary action in these places until they get their act together. And they don't, because they benefit from it. So it's completely corrupt. And yet it's also visible to the whole world how corrupt it is. And yet nothing seems to change. Why is that?
Okay. With regards to the nation's finances, can you describe what is meant? Oh no, sorry, that's one I just read.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. What is your opinion? I know I read that one as well. What is your opinion of austerity as a method to reduce the deficit?
I believe that it's a con. I believe that austerity is ideology of basically a fascist ideology where the ruling elite, the wealthy people, are using the debt deficit as an excuse to slash services to people who can't afford to support themselves because of their right-wing ideological agenda, where they believe that somehow they've earned the privilege, they've earned the money, and a lot of them have been born into it, they've inherited it, or they've fucked other people over in order to obtain it, possibly through things like illegally, not legally, but immorally having their companies registered in shadow banking and tax havens, Cayman Islands or wherever, where they don't pay tax, they don't pay towards our schools, our healthcare, our policing, the army, all these things that are being cut back. They don't contribute towards any of it, and yet they benefit from our society. And then they sell us this idea through the media, who's related to these people, the media, industry, government. It's all linked as part of this sort of, say, a very right-wing totalitarian system. And
I think we have to move.
Just move. There we go. Let there be light. So when you read the newspapers and you see the spin, it's like, oh, we must save money, we must get back to a surplus. That again is an idea, but it's an idea where it's sold through the media because the media benefit from the existing system because they're again right-wing, wealthy fascists. In fact, whether you're Rupert Murdoch or the Australian Prime Minister or David Cameron, it doesn't matter. It's all part of the same sort of fascist system, I would say. So austerity is the idea we're sold, and yet historically we've seen other nations even Britain, say after the Second World War, their debt to GDP ratio was a lot higher than what Britain has now. And Britain's, cutting public services. The Tories are trying to sell all the public infrastructure because that's their agenda. Private ownership, profit. And yet, after the Second World War, where the debt to GDP ratio was so much worse than it currently is, they embarked on a public works spree. They increased the amount of debt, by having no doubt deficit every year for however many years, and they repaired the railways, they repaired the roads, they rebuilt the nation, which generated income. Because as soon as people start earning, you start taxing their earnings. People start spending, you start getting VAT on the spending. It generates this income for the government by spending money, and that is what we could be doing, but because of the ideology, because they want to fuck the poor, that's not happening. And that's why, even now, like these fascist parties that are in power, the economy is fucked. And all this fucking the poor austerity is meant to fix the economy. But it hasn't, because whilst they've been fucking the poor, they've been cutting taxes to the wealthy people that they're friends with, these wealthy corporations and individuals. They've not been clamping down on tax avoidance. And they've been borrowing more money from whoever it is the government borrows money from. So the deficit has increased since the fascists have been in power. Although their whole ideology, the whole agenda has been to reduce the deficit and in fact mandate by law that the government must run a surplus, which is only going to make it more impossible for future governments, because running a surplus isn't healthy, because where do you get the money from if you must pay for vital services? And the way you do that is by debt. You borrow money from the central bank, and then you pay for vital things like healthcare or police or whatever it might be. So if you've got to run a surplus, it means you basically can't afford a lot of the things that society needs. So it doesn't make any sense in the real world, in the economic world. And even now they're talking about George Osborne maybe is going to get booted out. He won't be the Chancellor anymore because the economy is so bad, because there's possibly another recession hitting the world right now. And even though most people maybe aren't aware of it, there's a threat that the property bubble is going to just fucking go. And all of these hyperinflated properties like London, Sydney, all these things where these people have illegally been investing money, well, not illegally, but they've been investing money through the shadow banking industry, that we cannot possibly legitimize where the income came from because it's all within these secrecy jurisdictions. But if you're a millionaire and you can come in and you can buy a penthouse in London in cash, then people don't care. They don't care where you've got the money from, and then it just slowly pushes all the prices up because real people can't compete. Because real people pay tax somewhere between, like 20%, 40% on their income. But if you've just stolen money from Africa or from Russia or wherever the hell it is you've got your money from, and you just follow it through the secrecy jurisdictions, and then you buy a flat in London or wherever, you've got none of that reality affecting you. All you have is your wealth. And I've forgotten what the question was. But that was a good grab though.
That was the
austerity. Yeah, so it's austerity. It's fucking bullshit. It's bullshit. We know it's bullshit. Fuck the poor. That's what austerity is. Globally fucking the poor. It would make sense if they were actually going to be taxing these corporations and people. If it's like we must make money to pay for shit, and they're not. And actually in Australia, I think it's the Australian Institute, they did a big study about what's the problem, why can't we afford this shit, and like where are we going wrong, where's the government going wrong? And it isn't that we don't, well, the problem is we don't have enough money to pay for the stuff we need. But it's a revenue problem. They're not taking enough money in. And they could be generating something like 100 billion a year in Australia alone, just by things like taxing corporations, taxing wealthy people's savings, something to do with wealthy people's superannuation. They get all these tax breaks. So if you're really, really wealthy, you pay fuck all tax. But if you're poor and you're putting in superannuation, you get taxed. You pay more tax than the wealthy people. Okay, like a nurse or a teacher or whoever, the amount will be less, but the percentage will be greater. which doesn't make any sense because these people have more to give, basically. They've already benefited from whatever practices that have allowed them to generate income in the first place. And we could be generating like 100 billion a year just by sensible taxation. Not fucking the rich, but just making the rich pay a fair amount. And we don't. Instead, the agenda is austerity. And that's ideology. Fascism. Global fascism. Right-wing nut jobs.
Okay, next question. Okay. If you could adopt one policy to make a fairer society, what would it be?
One policy to make a fairer society. I would make it the law that any company that wishes to trade in a country must have a registered head office in that country, and it should be like compulsory, total like financial transparency. So instead of say Google or whoever making money from ad sales here, but registering those trades in, I don't know, the Netherlands or wherever it might be, and paying tax in the Netherlands at like, I don't know, 10% or 5%, whatever it might be, they would have to register the office that deals with Australian advertising in, say, Sydney, or Canberra, isn't it? Or maybe even the state, whatever, the country or the state. Say Canberra as an example, and then they'd pay tax at the level that companies pay tax in Canberra. And instead of like hiding it halfway around the world, we would then get the benefit of that trade that's happened here. Because it has happened here. People have clicked on the ad, you know, the money's been paid by an Australian company to Google here. It's all happened here. And yet through these non-illegal but corrupt practices, they move money around and it appears over here. And they'll possibly, say in the Cayman Islands or the Virgin Islands, some of these companies might be a PO box with some guy's name on it who doesn't even know what the company does. And that was a lot of what the Panama Papers was talking about. You know, so that would be the thing. Make the companies register here, make sure that they disclose all of the income and everything here, and possibly have something to do with making it illegal or having certain limits on intra-company loans, because a lot of companies, like say, I don't know, say Google made a lot of money here, or Google maybe not the best example, but we'll use them. Say they made a lot of money here, they then might borrow millions off a parent company that was, say, in the Bahamas or whatever, and then they would have to pay money back as a loan to this parent company. So then that would become tax deductible. So say they did that here, say they earn like, I don't know, say they earn 25 million in Australia, but they borrowed 20 million or 23 million off the parent company, and then got charged interest or paid whatever, and ended up owing them more money than they made, even though it's the same company. And it happens, they might then get a tax rebate from the government because they made a loss. And if they've already contributed towards tax, they might get paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from our taxes because they made a loss. Or that was bullshit because they borrowed the money off themselves, charged interest to themselves, just see like a lower tax hit and everything. So it's like, how is that morally appropriate? You know, when, like you say, people would cut services to people to make sense. I would change that, and that would change a lot of things because the money, I think, would come locally, and they would be able to spend money locally.
Okay. All right, last question. If you were God for one day, what one thing would you change?
If I was God for one day.
That's if God could change things, I guess.
Yeah, the idea of God. If I was God for one day, I think if I was God for one day, I would like to make the whole world realize that we're in it together. You know, whatever faith or non-faith you're from, I would like to be able to deliver a message to every individual and tell them to basically stop fucking it up for everybody else and come together and realize that we're one family, and all we have is each other. And if we fuck it up, it's going to be gone. That's what I do. Which would be pretty funny, because there'd be a lot of atheists out there and they'd be like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. Bring everybody together and fucking make them get along. Stop killing killing each other and raping each other, fucking each other over. That'd be pretty good.
I think everyone would agree on that.
Cool, so that's it.
Thank you.
That's it. Wrap it up.
ZT.